Welcome back to another episode of the Lender Podcast. I'm Bryce Matheson, and as always, this episode is brought to you by Lender. Lender is a loan management software tool designed to help you with every aspect of your business, from origination to servicing to payoff. Lender helps you with document generation, helps you with collecting monthly payments, dispersing monthly payments to your investors, taking in new loan applications, giving your borrowers a portal that they can log into, giving your investors a portal that they can log into. Pretty much every aspect of everything that you do inside of your lending business can be done and facilitated through Lender. You can check that out by going to joinlender.com. That's LENDR, joinlender.com. Now, on to the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the Lender Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bryce Matheson. Today, we have got Mr. Austin Geiser. Thanks so much for being here, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Excited to get the opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah. This will be fun. I love, like I said before the call, I love chatting with anyone and everyone, especially in the lending space. Like, doesn't matter how much experience you have or don't have. It's just like, it's such a cool community. Everybody is so kind, so willing to help or share deals or share capital or share paperwork or, whatever it may be. So it's a really, really cool community. So first and foremost, obviously, like I'm getting to know you, and I think the audience wants to get to know you too. So give us your quick introduction and how you even got into the lending space or get started in real estate, and then we'll take it from there.
Right on. Yeah. So I started in construction straight out of high school. I worked out for 2 years, realized that I did not enjoy manual labor. I didn't like working in that space, and ended up moving to Hawaii on a whim. Pulled my 401k at the time. Kind of had aspirations to start a business of some sort and didn't know what it was. Ended up meeting a guy on Craigslist that became my first mentor in the real estate space, taught me what wholesaling and fix and flip looked like. And I used that 401k to do a couple deals with him. I actually lent before I ever did a fix and flip deal. I didn't even know what lending was at the time, but I had this 401k money set aside, and he asked if I wanted to put some money into a project with him, become a JV partner, a finance partner on it. So I did a couple deals with him. He kind of taught me the ropes on the fix and flip side, and I made some money on my money initially before ever doing any wholesale or fix and flip or anything like that. I lived out there for a couple years and then ended up moving back here to Southern California, where I am now. And in that time, I wanted to figure out what to do next, where I wanted to go. I had a small grasp on wholesale and fix and flip, but didn't know what to do. I ended up joining up with a nationwide company that does wholesale new Western acquisitions. I worked with them for 4 years, learned the ropes, really dug deep into the wholesale side of things and understood how to do acquisitions and underwrite deals and then go and dispo those deals all at the same time. Kind of started building my lender connections at that point because I was working closely actually with the company I'm with now to push my buyers into the lending space that they needed to get them the hard money and financing they needed for these deals.
Okay.
Yeah. And then COVID hit 2020. I was at this company still, decided I wanted to step out and do it on my own. I had a friend that was there with me, left a couple months before I did. He started wholesaling on his own and doing some fix and flips. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, let's partner up on this. You don't need to be with this company. You can go do it on your own. It's just as easy to do it on your own as it is for another company, and you get to keep a bigger piece of the pie." So we ran that company for a few years together, did really, really well in the wholesale space. And during that time, probably the most beneficial thing that I gained outside of the knowledge was the network that I built through buyers that I still work with as borrowers today, lenders that I came to know. Gained a lot of knowledge in that time, but also learned that I did not enjoy running a wholesale company. It's a lot of reinvesting money that you make back into marketing dollars. We started out with super low overhead, maybe $2,500 a month to get these deals. And we grew it up to where we were spending $25,000 to $35,000 a month to do these deals. And I didn't like that. It was the same thing over and over. There's no reoccurring revenue. You don't get to do business with the same seller over and over again. The only reoccurring business you do is with the buyers that you build relationships with. So ran that for a while with him, decided to step away, and I was looking at what I could do. And I have a friend, Kat Rao, who's been in the lending space for a few years. I had met her at New Western back in the day. And she'd been super successful in the lending space, been doing hard money for, I think, 2 years at the time that I talked to her about this. And she said, "Hey, like, you need to come over and have an interview with us, talk to us, and see if this is something you want to do. Your network is going to be directly applicable. You should be able to transition pretty easily into this. Came over, did my interview, and really that's when I started to learn more about what it looked like to do the lending side of the business and originate loans and do all of that. And it really interested me. The biggest thing that interested me was the reoccurring revenue aspect of it. I can do deals with the same borrower, and it's not kind of chasing and running on the hamster wheel that wholesale was, where every day is a grind to find the next deal. You're constantly stressing about getting that next deal so that you can cover your marketing budget. It really appealed to me, the reoccurring revenue, and also just tapping into my network. So I stepped into the lending space May of last year. I've been doing it now. It's my 7th month now. Was able to, like she had told me, really step into the space, connect with my network, and it was a really easy transition. I've been super blessed that a lot of the buyers that I worked with in the wholesale space were very willing to jump over and get term sheets with me and start running loans through me. And I'm super happy with where I'm at now. I still do a bit of wholesale on the side. I'll still do some fix and flip on the side, but lending is my primary business right now, and I love it.
Wow. Okay, so there's a ton to unpack there. So I've got a couple
long thing.
No. It's good. It's beautiful. I just lots of stuff to unpack there. So, first and foremost, I'm curious. Way back when you were first in Hawaii, what was the moment of inception, or what was the catalyst to get, I mean, a random dude on Craigslist? That's got to be a good story, where you just I want to get into real estate, and so you look somebody up, or what was that whole background with?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Cody Sperber. He was one of the OGs in the wholesale education space back in the day. This was 2014, 2015. And I followed him on Instagram. I was still trying to figure out what to do, what I wanted to do for a career, for business at the time. Followed him on Instagram, bought his ebook at the time. It was all about wholesaling. And the thing that he preached a lot in this ebook was, which is hilarious because I think it's opposite now, you find the buyers first before you find the deals. Now I completely think it's opposite. You find good deals and the buyers are going to come to you. But so in my mind, I was like, I need to find buyers. And I'm on the big island of Hawaii. It's a pretty rural area, so there's not a ton of investors on the island, but there was deals being done. So I went on Craigslist one day. I made up a fake house ad. The numbers on it were great. It was not a real deal, nothing I had under contract, but I was just like, if I make this ad, maybe some people will reach out to me. I can tell them, hey, this is fake. I'm just trying to connect, and go from there. And the very first guy that called me was my first mentor and still an amazing friend of mine, Elmer Solis, probably one of the biggest investors on that island specifically. He does a lot of business there. And the first thing he says when I pick up the phone, he's like, I know your ad is BS. Nobody gets deals like that on this island, but you're obviously trying to do something here. So let's go get coffee and chat and see how I can help. And it was supposed to be a quick trip to the coffee shop to introduce each other and see how we could work together in some way. We ended up sitting at this coffee shop for 4.5 hours. And he gave me the rundown on everything that he did. He was very open with me, which is something that I try and bring into my life now still today. Is just, he was so helpful. He was so willing to share everything that he had, everything that he knew. And he really was the catalyst for me saying, okay, this is something I could do. He's an ex-Marine. He was not, super highly educated. He was just a guy that he really gritted through it. And a day before the internet was so filled with knowledge and easily accessible to learn this, he learned it the hard way. He just beat his head against the wall until he figured it out. And he shared everything with me. I met him, and it kind of took off from there.
Wow. Okay. That's I love that. But also, I think back to my earlier days too. And I don't know if you've ever had somebody who's come up to you and they're like, hey, will you mentor me? And I fucking hate that. It drives me crazy just because it's no, show me some initiative, show me some sort of put some effort out there. Sorry, let me put my busy day and everything and all my operations on pause to just mentor you. And that's not what mentors want to see. They want to see that you're actively out there doing something. So the fact that you were going out there and posting an ad, even if it's the numbers were BS on Craigslist, that I'm positive is why that even opened that conversation in the first place, because the guy could see you're hungry and he's like, there's something to it. You know what I mean? It's just, yeah, anyway, so I think that's really interesting. So side tangent, but very cool because that obviously carries over to everything that you've done now, like building this massive network of people and borrowers and capital and whatever else it may be. Just I don't know, so cool. So the next question I had was, did you ever feel, especially in Hawaii, because I know property values are like insane. Did you ever feel like the home values were stopping you from getting started just because, and like I realized like this was, 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? Like home values were definitely different, but Hawaii is still a higher cost of living area. Even like a dumpy house is $1 million, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you ever feel like in the beginning that stopped you?
At the very beginning, yeah. Fortunately, the island I was on, the Big Island, like I said, it's a pretty rural island, and the home prices, even still today, are significantly lower than every other island. You can still get a reasonably nice house for $400,000-$500,000. At the time I was living there, they were $150,000 to $200,000, which was still a monumental amount of money to me. I saw those price tags and I was like, "What am I even doing here?" But fortunate that I met Elmer, and he really educated on like, hey man, you don't need to have this money up front. You don't need to have $200,000 to go buy this house. There's ways to purchase these properties. There's ways to do business in the real estate industry where you don't need to bring a bunch of upfront capital. I think that if I wouldn't have met him and he educated me on that, I probably wouldn't even be here today, because that was a huge wall that I had to climb over in the beginning, just trying to wrap my head around, like, I'm a 20-year-old kid. I don't have $200,000 to go do a deal on this property. So he helped me out a lot with that. He taught me, he was really big in raising private money at the time. He still does today. A lot of his deals through private money connections that he's made. And he showed me examples. He was like, hey, this is a person that I know. I think they were a doctor, a lawyer, some high net worth individual. So they have a bunch of money. They want to park it somewhere. I got deals. So I pay them X amount of money a year, or X percentage a year on this money that they're lending to me. And I don't come out of pocket anything. I'm just doing these deals for free and making money on it. And that was shocking to me. I was like,
what do you mean? Blown at the time. You're like, what are you talking about? Like none of your own money, because that's always like the guru like thing in the industry, right? Like $0 down, none of your own money. But like, as you get into it and you get more experience, you're like, oh no, this is very common. Like you can do seller finance, you can do seller wraps, you can wholesale, you can use private money. Like a lot of the times, if you're doing it right, you really don't need that much money, but it takes the experience to learn that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely mind blowing for me. I was shocked. And then from there, I started to realize how much money there is actually out there. It doesn't even need to be high net worth individuals. You have family members that have money that they're not doing anything with. They're happy to make 5% a year sitting in their 401k account. They'd be much happier to make 10, 12, 13% to lend it to you and get deals done.
Sure. Absolutely. Oh, okay. Which then leads into like the next period of the episode where we're like going to obviously talk about lending. So I've noticed a traditional like trend with all of our guests is like everybody starts either wholesaling or buying rentals, and then they move on to flipping because they realize that the rentals are like kind of a pain in the ass. And then you're like, well, flipping and wholesaling really isn't that great either. And so you kind of look for like the next best thing. And that, that's my own progression too. I had a very similar story. I started with the rentals, moved on to the flips, then moved into the lending. Was there like a straw that broke the camel's back moment? Like you already kind of touched on that where you're like, it's not reoccurring, it's a grind, but like, was there one big main event where you're just like, oh man, I hate this. I got to do something different?
I don't know that if it was a significant event that happened. It was kind of a culmination of years. I did hundreds of wholesale deals over the course of the years, and I just got burnt out on it. I got burnt out talking to sellers. At a certain point, I had acquisition agents working under me that were doing the seller calls, and I was still burnt out on it. I didn't like the business model very much at scale. I thoroughly enjoyed wholesaling and still enjoy wholesaling when it's just single connection networking. You talk to an agent, they have a deal and they just need help moving it. That's what I do currently. I don't really spend any ad spend on my wholesaling side of things. But through my network, I have individuals that are, hey, I have this deal. I can't move it. I don't know many investors. Can you help me out with this? And I can connect them with the buyer and make a nice wholesale fee on it. But at scale, wholesaling just becomes such a grind. And especially when I was like 25 at the time, to my name in my bank account, I didn't have a ton of money. In the business bank account, we had good money, but it was constantly revolving. It was this revolving door, and so much anxiety wrapped around the fact that like I just put out $25,000-$30,000 this month on ad spend. If I can't recoup that, like it's maybe 2 months and then I have no runway left and I'm back to square one. And that was such a scary position to be in. So I think I got burnt out on it, and I just decided I didn't want to continue scaling. I met a lot. I was fortunate to meet a lot of individuals in the wholesale space through a mastermind program that I was a part of across the country that were doing this at a super high scale. So way above what I was doing. And I got to look at them, and I saw that even at the scale they were at, it was still such a grind. I guess that was the straw that broke the camel's back, seeing the revolving door of money, the constant chase to just find the next deal. It's exciting, it's exhilarating, it's fun when you're getting deals, but there are months that go by, especially when interest rates changed toward the end of COVID. Deals started getting really hard to do. And I was putting out so much marketing spend that I didn't see a way to continue scaling it to where I stepped away from the business. So I was like, what else can I do? What can I do where there's more reoccurring money, where I'm not putting a bunch of ad spend out, and I'm still in the same space. I have this great network. I've met great people. Where can I go next? And that's how I fell into lending through my friend Kat that invited me over here.
Gotcha. Okay. And were you still in Hawaii at this point when you started lending, or were you all the way back in California?
No, I moved back to California when I started at New Western. So that would be, I think, 7 years ago now.
Gotcha. Okay. Perfect. Amazing. No, and I'm with you. I completely agree. I've got a close friend of mine who is doing the same thing. He's got a big wholesale operation. And he spends $25,000 to $30,000 a month on mailers and skip tracing and all this stuff. And then he's also got like a team underneath him, and he pays commission and all these things, but it's still at the end of the month, like there is not a lot left over. And, so I think sometimes he looks at us in our lending business and he's like, oh man, wouldn't that be nice? But the thing is, like, you can do it. Like it's not, the reason that I ask all these questions is just because a lot of the same principles carry over into lending, right? You're like, well, it's the same thing as when you're trying to flip a house. Like when, say you have $1 million to, the average Joe Schmo on the street sounds like a ton of money. But when you're lending it out at $300,000 chunks at a time, like it goes really fast. And even more so when you're lending in California, where home prices are just insane, So, yeah. Tell me about that transition, moving from the wholesaling into lending. Was it like kind of like an abrupt stop, and then now you're completely into lending, or was it like a slow, like we slowed this down and then started to ramp this side of the business up?
It was a pretty abrupt stop. I had actually stopped all of my marketing on the wholesale side a few months prior to moving into lending, because I was in a position where I wanted to save the money for whatever was next. I didn't know what that was, but I was like, I'm done with wholesaling. I'm not interested in it at scale anymore. I want to make sure I have capital to move into the next thing where I'm not hurting. So I had stopped a couple months prior. And when I came into lending, but prior in wholesaling, everything was direct to seller and marketing based. So I didn't do a lot of relationship based business. I had this great network of buyers that I was selling deals to. I had service providers that I was doing business with. I never really tapped into them when I was on the wholesaling side. I was very much ad spend, go find the next deal and work directly with sellers. And it's funny because I never utilized my network in wholesaling. I started out utilizing my network. The first deals I did were through agents, through word of mouth, through introductions from people that I knew. And then once I started doing ad spend, I just thought that was the holy grail. I thought every deal I did had to come from this ad spend because I'm spending the money on it. So I wanted to capitalize on it as much as possible. So throughout my wholesale career, I didn't use my network at all, really. I was doing everything direct and through ad spend. So when I decided to jump into lending, it was, like you had mentioned, it was a hard stop. I came over, I talked to Kat, I talked to Scott over here at Easy Street Capital, and they kind of told me, hey, this is the same as wholesaling in certain senses, but it's also very different in the sense where it's way more relationship based. It's way more network based. You're going to do more business trying to build relationships with people than you are just hunting for the next deal like you do in wholesaling. So that was the point when I started here. I sat down and I was like, I didn't have a database or a CRM of my contacts of my network. I had a CRM of sellers and stuff that I'd used for years. But I was like, okay, I need to get organized on this. I need to get tactical on this. I need to take some of these skills that I learned from the wholesaling and running that business over here through KPIs, through CRM management. But I also need to apply, my network and connecting with people better. And so the first couple weeks I was here was just sitting on the phone. I went through my phone and I called everyone I'd ever done business with and just said, hey, I'm lending now. I'm still doing some wholesale deals. If I have deals, I'll give them to you. I'm still here, but my primary business is lending now, and that's what I'm going to be focused on. And I was super fortunate that the people that I'd done business with in the past, not all of them, but a good chunk of them, I had good relationships with. I always tried my best to do good in business, be honest, be ethical. So I had a good reputation on that side of things. So when I said, hey, I'm lending now, in addition to the fact that we have a great product over here for our lending services, great rates, great servicing, quick closes. These people were super willing to at least give me a shot. Let me look at the deal. Let me get you a term sheet and see what we can do. And from there, it's completely flipped 180 from all ad spend, chase the next deal to now it's just purely relationship based. My day now looks completely different than my day did when I was wholesaling, for the better. I love this industry so much because I went from sitting on the phone all day talking to sellers that didn't want to talk to me. Now I really feel like I'm just BSing with people that I like, people that I call friends, and trying to help them make their deals work. So it's so much more enjoyable hanging out with people on the phone, going to lunches. I go to a lot of meetups now to meet more people. I love this side of the business so much more than I enjoy wholesaling.
Agreed. I'm with you. And yeah, it wears you down when you have enough sellers that like hang up on you or cuss you out or whatever, that just because like they're so upset. Yeah, it is a fun contrast too. And now like people are coming to you because they need money instead of you chasing after them. So it is a fun shift.
Absolutely.
Let's transition over to Easy Street Capital. So correct me if I'm wrong, but Easy Street Capital is like a huge name in the industry. Like you guys are massive. Like I've heard the names before. Like, are you guys nationwide? Like, give us the kind of the rundown where you guys lend, your capital stack, how many borrowers you have, how many investor, like all as much as you can.
Yeah, we're nationwide. There's an exclusion of a few states and geographic areas, the Dakotas, New York, Nevada, Mississippi, that we don't touch. But overall, we're a nationwide lender. Our main three products are fix and flip product, our DSCR rental product, and then our ground up construction product. We have some sub products that really cater to especially wholesalers. We do transactional funding as well for the wholesalers that need to double close on their deals. But I'd say, at least for myself, my main business is the fix and flip side. That's where my network is. That's what I know most. And specifically here in Southern California is where I do most of my business. Our headquarters is in Austin, Texas. We have a huge team out there. Our team outside of California is much larger than our team in California. And we're doing deals. I'd say a big majority of our deals are Texas, Florida, Colorado, and then California, obviously. Especially with the pricing out here, I'd say our loan volume in California is significantly higher than anywhere else. We're dealing with $1 million homes. But yeah, we're a nationwide lender. I focus primarily on the fix and flip and ground up construction side. As far as where our capital is coming from, I'm not 100% familiar with that. That's not really what I focus on. My main focus is loan origination, and really, since I just started in this 6-7 months ago, just learning and understanding the game as much as I can. So I haven't dug into any of that stuff. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at and where we're operating and what we do. I'd say we're a pretty big lender. We're still not up there with some of the larger ones like Kiavi and or Center Street and whatnot, but we are competing with them, and I think we'll pass them here in the next couple of years.
I love it. Okay. The main reason that I ask specifically about the capital is like typically when we talk to other lenders, it's like very bootstrapped, very small startups. Once you get into some of the bigger lenders, you've got institutional capital and lines of credit, and like $100 million lines of credit. Like most of the people that we network with are like, we got 3 million to 40 million out on the streets, and you're raising capital from grandmas and aunts and, everything you can. So, I'm sure Easy Street has a whole conglomerate combination of like where everything comes from. But I was just curious if, working there, you had any more insight on what that looks like. But that's,
I mean, I can tell you that a lot of our money is institutional on the back end. We're definitely not, as far as my knowledge, bootstrapping, raising small amounts of cash from, grandma and grandpa. But coming from the institutional side, we did just over $1 billion in loans last year on the books. So yeah, you can't raise that kind of money from mom and dad. So a lot of that money is definitely coming from institutional backing. We are also, this is one thing that I was told when I started here, and that I think is pretty important. We're so well capitalized that during the big interest rate shift during COVID, there was a lot of lenders that ran out of capital or just stopped lending altogether. We didn't have that issue. Even some lenders that are larger than us ran out of capital and weren't funding loans or were delaying their fundings for significant periods of time while they figured out what they could do. We're capitalized enough that we had no issue with it. We ran right through it head first. Like there was no change in anything.
interesting. Yeah, when that shift happened, there, like you said, there were a lot of people that did just like they pumped the brakes, which like rightly so, right? Like you don't want to keep deploying all this capital, especially if it is grandma, grandpa's, aunts, and you're not really sure like what's going to happen with the market. Like it's scary for sure. And we noticed that same thing. There are a lot of lenders in our space who they did have institutional lines of credit or whatever, and their lines got old, and so they did have this big operation, and they've come back. Some of them went out of business, and some of them were just paused temporarily. But yeah, it was a super scary time, just not really sure what was going to happen when the whole world is shut down, and who knows what's even going to happen to real estate, and obviously hindsight's 2020. We know what happened now, as this giant supersonic boom and everything took off. But in the moment, it was pretty terrifying. Do you know why Easy Street like did so well during that time? Was there like any specific strategy or anything that they, their claim to fame, what was successful for them?
I can't tell you exact reasons. I can tell you from what I can infer from what I've seen. I think that our leadership here is incredible. We're a relatively young company compared to some of these other large lenders. I believe we were started in 2015 or 2017. Oh, I remember correctly. So we're not a super old company, but our leadership here is incredible. They're very good with raising capital on the back end. I think that's been one of their biggest focuses, is just making sure that we're well capitalized on the back end. Because the biggest thing that we strive for on the front end is we want to provide the best experience for the investor as possible, so we can close extremely quickly. Everything is serviced in-house, from underwriting, origination, servicing. All of it's done in-house. Okay. And that really gives our investors confidence that their loan's going to be handled correctly and properly every single time, over and over. We can close in 48 hours on these fix and flip loans, very, very quick. DSCR is a completely different story. As you know, those take a significantly longer time. But I think that our management put so much weight on providing a good experience to the investor on the front end that they really spent a lot of time making sure that the back end was supported by capital and that we'd have no issues prior to that even happening. So when it did happen, we had a good reputation. We were well capitalized on the back end, and we didn't have a ton to worry about, because investors knew that, if there's one thing that you know about Easy Street, it's that if we give you a term sheet, we're going to close on that deal. We're going to do what we say. We're going to get it done quickly, and everything's going to be as smooth as possible for you. So I think that helped us out a ton. I think our management here is excellent.
Which, is that speaks volumes. I almost quite literally every single day I get a call from some borrower that says, hey, I had this locked up. I had this other lender that was going to help me out. We are basically to the closing table. Like, we have to close by Friday. And they just pulled their funding, or they can't do it, or they came back and said something happened. There's a plethora of different reasons that happen, but quite literally every single day we get a phone call. And so when you have that signed term sheet and you have a deal on the line, as you know, whether it's a wholesale or flipper being on the other side of it, like, you want to make sure it closes. And so that speaks volumes when you just know, like, look, I've got a term sheet. They are highly confident. They know, like, without a doubt that it's going to close. Like that. that alone is going to give you the repeat borrowers. As soon as you have a negative experience with another lender, like why on earth would you ever go back to them? So
Yeah,
it makes a huge difference.
absolutely. I think a good half of my borrowers that I work with currently are people that came to me in the same exact way. Hey, I got a term sheet. I was doing this deal through another large institutional lender. I'm not going to name names. And they either gave me the bait and switch on terms, changed terms at the last minute, or, extended the closing timeline because they just weren't prepared to close. I have 2-3 days till closing. I can't get an extension on this. Can you help me out? And then they see how easy the process is, and they don't even call that guy the next time. They're calling me the next time, and they say, hey, I know you're going to do what you say you're going to do. We're going to get it done. I'm okay if it costs a little bit more because we're definitely not the cheapest lender in the space. We did just reduce rates this year to 8.9 to 9.9%, so we are extremely competitive still. But we're also pretty conservative with our underwriting. We're not going to leverage things to the highest extent unless you're an extremely experienced borrower. So some lenders might be able to, or some borrowers might be able to go to another lender and get, almost 100% financing on some of these deals and these crazy terms that you hear, 8.9% for a new borrower, 1 point. That's not the space we play in. We play in the reliability space. We want to make sure that our borrower is actually going to succeed on this deal, especially because we're servicing the deal ourselves and we hold our foreclosure rating extremely low, and that's pretty important to us. We want to make sure that our borrowers actually succeed, because if they don't succeed, they're not going to come back for more business. So yeah, I'd say a huge chunk of the borrowers that I work with now are people that came to me from a bad experience with another lender, and they're hooked now.
I love it. Okay. Tell me kind of what your next outlook is, either for you or for the business as a whole. Like, what are your goals for 2025, and what are you hoping to accomplish by the end of the year?
Biggest thing for me personally is I just want to understand what I'm doing better. I'm really big on learning and knowledge and understanding the things that I do. I'd say that I'm a student ahead of everything. So trying to learn as much as I can about the lending side of the space is only going to help me become a better originator in the space. Big goals, I want to hit a certain number of loans originated in terms of volume. I think that I'll be able to hit that. And I really want to focus down on just providing the best service to my borrowers that I can so that they keep coming back. 'Cause like I had mentioned earlier in the conversation, my favorite thing about this industry is that I can work with the same guy 5-6 times in a year and keep making money off of that and having a good relationship with that person. But that stops as soon as they have a bad experience with us. They're going to go shop around to another guy. I think that my biggest goal in the space for this year is just making sure that I'm servicing my borrowers the best that I can, that I'm educating myself as much as I can, so that when they ask me questions, when they come to me with a deal and they want to make sure it makes sense, I can provide that value to them. On a company level, we were just talking about this at our corporate meeting last month. Total private money loan volume is supposed to increase dramatically this year. It's forecasted to increase, I think it was something like 50%. From last year. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. And I think even at Easy Street, though we are considered a larger lender, we're still barely scratching the surface of what we can do in terms of loan volume generated and loans that we're doing, especially in some of I'd say that our main focus has been on the RTL fix and flip side. I think that there's a huge opportunity for us to work more on the DSCR side and then generate more business through brokers. I know myself personally, I'm not working with brokers currently as much as I should be. I think the biggest takeaway is just there's so much opportunity coming up this year. The market's looking healthy. I don't see prices coming down anytime soon. I don't see a dramatic change in the market coming anytime soon. So right now we're just poised to deploy as much capital as we can and hopefully double, what we did last year would be phenomenal. And I think it's very possible.
Yeah, double up from your $1 billion in originations already. That's that's a pretty lofty goal, but I'm here for it, and I'm sure you'll hit it. That's killer. Austin, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been so cool. Give us kind of like if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way? Either phone number or socials, or pitch all your stuff. How can someone get a hold of you? Whether they're just wanting to rub shoulders with you, or whether they're actually looking to get a loan through Easy Street.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm Austin_Geiser on Instagram. I use Instagram a lot for business connections, and LinkedIn, I'm just Austin Geiser. My email is austing@easystreetcap.com. You can reach me there anytime as well. I'm looking forward to hopefully connecting with a few people here, whether you're a borrower that needs money or just someone that wants to chat shop. I live this stuff. It's all I do. If you ask my wife, she'll tell you this is what I do for fun. So I'm constantly on the phone. I'm constantly talking to people and making sure that I'm just making new connections. So thanks again for having me, man.
And you bet. I think our wives will have to get together and start a support group, because I was like, you need to go talk to someone, because I can't hear about numbers anymore, interest rates and extension fees and, points. And she just like, her eyes gloss over. But anyway, Austin, you're the man. Thanks so much for being here. And for anybody else that's listening, thanks so much for tuning into this episode, and we will catch you next week on the Lender Podcast.